the Ummah is suffering. The Ummah, whether members of the Ummah are in Ireland, whether they are in England, America, Canada, Pakistan, Asia, Africa, wherever they are, since the Ummah is like one jasad, one body, when one part of the body is being hurt, is in pain, is in difficulty, the whole Ummah will feel that, because the Ummah is like a body. The whole complete body will be affected. Today I have the flag of Palestine on the table. Why? Because we as Muslims in Ireland, we as Muslims that belong to many countries, that are from many native countries, some from Sudan, some from Somalia, some from African continent, some from the Asian continent, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Iraq, etc., Malaysia, some from the Western countries. We have some brothers that are Irish, some people that are native Europeans. But we are all one Ummah, we are all one nation. And we as a nation cry because of what is happening to Palestine. We are crying because what is happening to the Palestinian people. We are in pain, suffering, that despite that we have 57 Muslim countries, we have no say in global political affairs. We have no veto power in the United Nations Security Council. We as Muslims, despite that all the resources of the world economy, and the world economy is based and its backbone is oil, despite that all oil producing countries happen to be Muslim countries, happen to be countries that belong to the Ummah of the Holy Prophet ﷺ, we are not the real beneficiaries of that black gold oil. We have still no say on global political affairs. And this pain of us, sometimes it is through wrong channels, utilized and exploited by some in the form of so-called jihad, which does more harm than it does benefit to the Ummah. In fact, it destroys the essence of Islam. It distorts the image of Islam, such so-called jihad. And on the other hand, what should we do then? We as Muslims living in European countries, in Muslim countries, what should we be doing? What can we do to change the state of this Ummah? What can we do that the Ummah that was once the torch bearers of knowledge in the dunya, when the Ummah was leading the world for 8 centuries, Europe was in its dark ages. Now this Ummah is in such a state that it is the most disgraced nation, unfortunately. It is unfortunately the most disrespected nation in the world. Despite having in quantity a huge number, we unfortunately are so disunited, and because of that we have no say in global political affairs. The aim and objective of this lecture and the lecture series is to create awareness among you about the reality. What is happening with this Ummah? How can we as members of this Ummah community change and put our part, participate with our small effort, individual effort, to change this situation of the Ummah? This is inshallah the aim and objective of the series of lectures. And before I start, in order to get an understanding what is happening and what the reality is of global political affairs, you must put aside the narrative that you have through the media, mainstream media. That narrative that you have in your minds, and that was developed because of the mainstream media, whatever they show you, I want you to put that aside for the moment. Put that what you see on the news aside, because that what you see on the mainstream media does not, unfortunately, 100% represent facts and accuracy. It is not 100% accurate. Why? Because the mainstream media is biased. The mainstream media is owned by certain individuals, certain people, and all of them are together. This media Why am I saying it is biased? Some may question, why do we say it is biased? Because the reality is that the media is owned by Zionists. The media is owned by certain individuals. In fact, 90% of the world media is owned by 7 individuals. These 7 individuals are not just Jewish, they are also Zionists. They happen to own, for example, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, MTV, BBC. They happen to own not just news channels, but also Hollywood production companies, Universal Studios, for example, Walt Disney Studios, for example. They happen to also own record labels. These record labels that then produce music and all those CDs of Western musicians and artists. They happen to own them also. They happen to own also printing press. 90% of the world's printing press is owned by them. So obviously, since they control everything, they can decide, and they decide what is printed and what is not printed, what is shown and what is not shown. In order to start, I will start with some history. I will start with some tariq. And the history is that after the Second World War, the Muslim Ummah in general became very weak, since the Ottoman Empire was destroyed. With the help of the Arabs, with the help of our Muslim brothers, the British Empire was able to remove and destroy the Ottoman Caliphate. In the Second World War, all countries that were part of the United Nations, they met. And the purpose of this meeting was that this meeting was the United Nations Monetary and Financial Conference. It was organized in Bretton Woods, and this is also known as the Bretton Woods Conference. The purpose and aim of this meeting was to regulate international monetary and financial order, that the whole world agrees to one regulation, a standard that will regulate all financial transactions, monetary transactions. So this Bretton Woods Agreement, that was the conclusion of this Bretton Woods Conference, in it was established that the US dollar would become the world reserve currency. The US dollar will become the world reserve currency, which meant that now all international commodities, all international transfers, buying and selling would take place in US currency, US dollars. This agreement, the Bretton Woods Agreement, gave the United States distinguished financial advantage. These dollars, it was agreed, were redeemable for gold at the rate of $35 per ounce. Yani, these dollars could be converted into gold at the rate of $35 per ounce. The United States was not allowed, of course, to produce and print US dollars as many as they want. The limit was that gold that they had in their reserves. So they can only print equivalent to the value of the gold that the United States possessed. The organization that was going to print these US dollars is the Federal Reserve System in the United States, the Federal Reserve System that prints these dollars. The Federal Reserve System denied any supervision, any audit, independent audit, to verify that indeed it is printing US dollars, paper, as equivalent to the gold that they have, to the value of the gold that the United States possesses. So because there was no audit, there was no supervision, independent, what happened was that the United States, of course, printed more US dollars than it had in gold value. Because of that, in 1960s, the Vietnam War took place. It became apparent at the end of the war to all countries that America has spent far more, it has printed far more US dollars than it has in gold. So countries started withdrawing their gold from America. Countries started to withdraw their gold from the United States. In 1971, when France attempted to withdraw its gold from the United States denied the request of France. In fact, at that time, the United States president was President Nixon. 1971, 15th of August, he delivered a press conference. In the press conference, he said that he had directed the Secretary of the Treasury to suspend convertibility of the dollar into gold, which meant now, if anybody would come with dollars, printing paper that America issued, printed, America will deny and has suspended to give gold in return. Why? Because since America did not have so much gold, as much they had printed the US dollars. 1973, President Nixon met King Faisal, Shah Faisal of Saudi Arabia, and made an agreement with him that now Saudi Arabia will only sell their oil in US currency. So anyone who wants to buy oil must buy it in US currency. In return for that, Saudi Arabia will receive protection from the US, military protection. Its monarchy will be protected at all costs. And this is why you see, my brothers and sisters, that in Saudi Arabia, you see military bases of the United States. One of the largest military bases in the Middle East, in fact, the largest is in Saudi Arabia. The second largest is in Kuwait. So the same offer was then extended to all other oil producing countries. All other, the Middle East basically, Khalij. So all OPEC members agreed in 1975, 1973, it was just a Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, and in 1975, all other OPEC members agreed to sell their oil in US dollars. Now this was very important and significant for America, because it meant the whole world requires oil. Whole world needs oil. So the whole world, China, Russia, Pakistan, India, the whole world, when they want to go to Saudi Arabia and they want to purchase oil, they need to pay in US dollars, which means that they have to have US dollars. For them to receive US dollars from America, America demanded them to send physical goods. This act was a very significant and historical, important act that gave America a huge economic advantage once again. And this was that they attached the dollar to oil. That for every oil importing country to start maintaining a constant supply of US dollars became a necessity. And in order for them to have that constant supply of the US dollars, they had to physically send goods to America, to the US, and US would then in return print their US dollars, print paper basically. This is the birth of the petrodollar. Academics started using this term, petrodollar. You may have heard it also. Paper went out, everything else came in. So America, whatever it needed, it just needed to print paper. The whole world would export to America, and America would import by buying in their printed money, and the world would then have to give physical goods to them. Due to this, America became extremely rich. This is the largest financial con in recorded history. The largest financial con. Because of this advantage, US was able to increase US military expenditure. Due to this, America was able to increase its military budget. Its military budget increased so much that in 1991 it became apparent that America, one country's military budget was more than all the military budgets of the whole world, all countries combined. This was only due to the petrodollar. This is only possible because of the petrodollar. America became the world superpower. In 1991, when America could afford so much military expenditure, it became the only superpower, undisputed. And Soviet Union collapsed. Soviet Union had no chance. It could never continuously spend that money, since it did not have that advantage that the Americans had. This superpower that is with the oppressing ones, this superpower that is with those that tortures, those that oppresses, it is supporting the Zionist state Israel. On what base is it the superpower? On what base did it become the world's greatest power? My dear brothers and sisters, it was because of that oil that is being produced in Muslim countries. Our leaders do not realize what they have done. The people in Gulf countries, they believe that they are the real beneficiaries of this oil. And they believe that since now they are able to drive Ferraris, they are able to drive very expensive cars, they are able to drive all these cars, and they are living a very luxurious life. They think that they are the real beneficiaries of this. But they do not realize they are just slaves and servants of that system. They are slaves of the United States. They have no say on global economic affairs. They have no say on global political affairs. Despite that America is the superpower because of their wealth, because of their resources, now they are only getting 5% of the benefit of that oil, and the remaining 95% America alone is getting. This is the irony of Muslims. This is the irony that we are living in. My dear brothers and sisters, for America to continuously sustain its superpower, continuously to be the superpower, it was important that it would ensure that all oil in the world is sold in US dollars. And anyone that will try to sell oil in any other currency than US dollar, or in anything else, in gold for example, than US dollar, then this would be the greatest threat to America. This would be the greatest threat to this superpower. And what happened? In 1991, when Soviet Union collapses, America invades Iraq. America invades Iraq, and there America destroys its infrastructure, military, its hospitals, and puts sanctions along with the United Nations on the Iraqis, on the Iraqi people, on the Iraqi citizens, on the nation, Iraqi nation. And due to these sanctions that lasted for 10 years, more than 500,000 children were killed. More than 500,000 children were killed because of these sanctions that the West imposed, America imposed through its puppets, the Western countries, on Iraq. And because of this, Iraq was unable to rebuild its country. Why was this done? This was to ensure that even Iraq could not start selling in dollars, in euros, or in anything else than the US currency. However, after many years, in November 2000, Iraq started selling their oil in euros. This was a big and direct attack on the American economy. This was a direct attack on America's superpower, America's dominant position. And this is why America then started a propaganda campaign against Iraq. Through its media, its Zionist media, all the biased media, a propaganda campaign started against the Iraqi nation, against Iraq, that it has weapons of mass destruction. It will attack Iran, it will attack Kuwait, it will attack Israel, and the world is under threat, and the world needs to tackle this threat, Iraq, so-called threat. And this is why they justified the war against Iraq once again. This is why they invaded Iraq once again. This was their justification, that we are invading Iraq because Iraq is a threat to world peace. The reality was Iraq was not a threat to world peace. Iraq was a threat to American dominant position. Iraq was a threat to the American economy because Iraq had started to sell their oil in euros and started to deviate from the path that it agreed in 1975 to sell in the US dollars. Now Iraq became the enemy number one. This is why we find that America bombarded Iraq, America invaded Iraq, and America destroyed Iraq, and America killed Saddam Hussein. It killed its own old ally and friend. Similarly, America in 2011 recently attacked Libya. Why did it attack Libya? The same Gaddafi that used to be their friend, the friend of many Western countries, suddenly became the bad guy. Why was it that they had to remove Gaddafi from Libya? What threat was Gaddafi to them? The only threat Gaddafi was to them was the similarly like Saddam was a threat to them. Saddam was a tyrant maybe, yes. Gaddafi may be a tyrant also, yes. But this was not their issue. This was not why they invaded the country. Their reason of invasion was, and attacking the country was because they felt that it was a threat to their economy. America went into Libya. America gave weapons to the rebellions, to the rebels, the extremists, the Al-Qaeda, the terrorists. Why? What was the reason? What was the purpose? It was because it was Gaddafi who was trying to unite the African continent. It was Gaddafi who organized a meeting with all African countries, the head of the states, and told them that since Europe has its own European Union, America is the United States of America, it has its puppet organization, United Nations. We as people that are in the African continent must have our own African Union. And he wanted to establish through this union one single currency, African currency, which would be the golden dinar, the gold dinar. This is what Gaddafi wanted to do. This is why Gaddafi was their enemy. This is why Gaddafi became a threat to them. And this is why they wanted and they had to invade Libya. They got rid of the tyrant. They invaded Libya. What happened then? Why have they left Libya like this? Today, 2014, Libya is under a civil war. Libya is destroyed. People are in a very bad situation. The terrorists are there now. Extremists are now there. Who is suffering? The public, the nation is suffering. If America was so honest and sincere, it would have rebuilt Libya. It would have helped the people of Libya. Their so-called freedom invasion for freedom, it did not give freedom to the people. It took their basic fundamental rights from them. They were living in a far better way, better state during the rulership of Gaddafi than they are now in 2014 after Operation Freedom. The question is, what did they do as soon as America attacked and invaded and killed Gaddafi? The first thing they did was they took control of the central bank of Libya. Now, there is no way that even the Libyans can be freed from this US currency. Similarly, my brothers and sisters, there is at this moment a propaganda campaign for many years against Iran, Iranian state. And they say that Iran is a very big threat to world peace. Similarly, they have started against Iran. And they use their puppets. They use their puppets. Saudi Arabia, for example. And they use these extremists that in the name of religion will fight against Iran or people that are supporting Iran. Why do you think that Saudi Arabia armed all those rebels in Syria? Why is it that these so-called muftis gave fatwas of jihad in Syria against Muslims? Why was that? Because it is not a matter of faith. Faith is exploited. Deen is exploited. Religious emotions are exploited by these people. What they do, they use the ignorance of the people and they make them fight against each other. The real reason why these muftis gave fatwa against Syrians, why the Saudi Arabian rulers armed the rebellions in Syria was because Syria is very closely linked with Iran. Syria has military agreements with Iran. Syria is the close ally of Iran. And since they see Iran as a threat, Saudi Arabia sees Iran as a threat, Syria is also a threat for them. Because Iran is not just a threat for Saudi Arabia, but also a threat for America. Why is Iran a threat for America? Because Iran has been for quite a few years campaigning to put oil sales off the dollars. Iran is actively campaigning for many years to start selling oil in euros or either in gold. And Iran is the last independent oil producing country. The US response against the threat of Iran, because Iran is a threat to their economy, was or is now to build international support for military strike on the pretext of preventing Iran from building a nuclear weapon. But the reality is, nuclear weapon capabilities are not the issue. Israel is the great nuclear power. Israel has nuclear capabilities. Russia has them, China has them, Pakistan has them. Why now Iran? Why are they worried about Iran? Iran did not attack a single country since 1798. Last time Iran attacked a country was 1798. Why is it that they are all behind Iran? The reason is simply because they see Iran as a threat to their economy. So they have put sanctions for many years on Iran to collapse its economy. At the same time, they are worried because Iran has very close ties and links with China and Russia. Iran has very close links with China and Russia. In fact, the Chinese and Russians have said that if America attacks Syria or Iran, it will be as America has attacked them. And this is why, despite that America wants to attack and invade Iraq and Syria and Iran and Syria, it cannot do so until now because of the pressure from the Russian government and from the Chinese government. America knows that if one country starts selling their oil in gold or in euros, it will start a chain reaction. And this chain reaction will collapse the economy of America, will collapse the backbone of America. The backbone of a country in this day and age is its economy. After having discussed Libya, Syria, and having discussed the country Iran, there are many other things, but I will inshallah in the next Jummah continue with this, and inshallah we will continue and we will be discussing Pakistan also, what the position of Pakistan is, because it is very relevant, the position of Pakistan. Since Pakistan is the only country, Muslim country, that is a nuclear power at this moment, and it is the only country that has been established because of faith, because of religion. Its establishment is due to religion, not nationalism, ethnicity, not race, not language, just deen, religion. All people from various cultures, Pathans, the Punjabis, the Balochis, Sindhis, all together are Muslims, and this is why this country was established. And Pakistan is very relevant because it is Pakistan that can change the state of this Ummah. And inshallah next week I will be discussing this in detail. Until next week.